Hey, what's up, you guys? I'm Bravo from 3OD, and that's Dan, the NB behind the cam.
Hi, how's it going?
Boom. So, today we're going to be talking about systems of oppression. And, disclaimer, if you're a little, not feeling it today, please log off. Now,
Skip this one. This isn't the one for you.
these examples are going to
With
be.
peace and love. We're not like kicking you out. We're just saying, if it's not feeling great, maybe just take this one off. Maybe just wait till next week. See the next video.
Or just watch the you can go just on the line and just look at the PowerPoint as it is available to you. So the examples here, I will pull no punches because oppression doesn't. Let's get into it. So what is oppression? Oppression is the unjust or cruel exercise of authority or power. Oppression may be overt or covert depending on how it's being practiced. Now, there are two different types of oppression. We have social and institutional oppression. Social oppression refers to more of an individual and community setting. Basically, the mistreatment of a group of people or exploitation or abuse of a group of people by another group of people. So, think of high school and picking on the fat kids, the black kids, the gay kids, the disabled kids, so on and so forth, the poor kids. The poors, so on and so forth. Institutional oppression is a systematic mistreatment of people within a social identity group. Now, this happens by enforcing laws, customs, and practices that will limit people's of a of a certain social identity group. So many S's. To not being able to advance or making it easy or normalized for them to be exploited, abused, and just generally mistreated. And maybe even killed. So how does oppression work? Now, institutions are fairly stable social arrangements and practices that require collaborative efforts being taken, meaning that multiple people have to agree to oppress this one group of people. And for that, you can think of the criminal justice system. We have racist laws enforced by a racist police force who go to trials that have often racist juries presented to racist judges, which lead to racism. Great. So, right, if 1 leads to 2 and 2 is to 3 and the math is mathing, then we can all agree to oppress one group of people, right? Now, that's pretty much understood. It works through overt and covert ways. Now, this is really how we get into more of the social oppression, which reinforces institutional oppression. Now, overt oppression is like, come here, fatty, or stop, you redacted. Because, stop, you nigger, faggot, bitch. You nigger, faggot, bitch, all at once, maybe.
Good God.
I'm not gonna, it comes into, he can't work. He's a little, So covert oppression, you may ask. Covert oppression is secret. It's hidden. It's subtle, more normalized. This comes through because the reason of covert oppression, the goal of it, is to make it so that way the target of the covert oppression is forced into a very uncomfortable spot where if they are to react, their reaction will seem much bigger and somewhat uncalled for. Like, you may have heard this through microaggressions. And as Dan pointed out in a video that we can't post, because we forgot a form of oppression, and that's on us, but we've included it in this video, is that by calling it microaggressions, it diminishes it. And
it minimizes it and makes it less of a thing. It makes it not an aggression. It makes it nothing.
And that's just not true. Asking someone, can I touch your hair? Where are you really from? Your English is so good are all forms of verbal violence. It's all straight up disrespect. Because if you think that it's not, ask yourself, would you ask or say any of those things to someone who looked exactly like you? You wouldn't. And you want to know why? Because it would be offensive. It would be dumb. They would look at you like you were a dragon with 3 heads. Like, what the fuck are you doing? Violence.
It's not always physical.
It's
We
not
get
always
it.
physical.
You're not always plunging a knife into somebody's chest or back or head. Sometimes you say shit that just it's not okay.
It is wrong. And often, not even often, almost always, physical violence is something that we build up to through emotional violence. There has to be a tension here. There's very rare that you're just going to see someone casually walking up the street unless you feel super entitled and overpowered, which means that you are benefiting from a system of violence against that group of people, that you're just going to see somebody walking down the street and be like, yeah, punch in the face. So, oppression is normalized through stereotypes and prejudices. Prejudice. Multiple forms of
Prejudice.
Hiya!
Fuck you, Prejudice.
Fuck you, Prejudice. So, what are stereotypes?
3OD subscribers are now known as Prejudice.
Yep, if you subscribe to 3OD, welcome, Prejudice. So,
Prejudice Army Supremacy. Jesus Christ.
So,
Supremacy.
Stereotypes. Stereotypes are attitudes, beliefs, feelings, and assumptions of a target group that are widespread and socially sanctioned. Socially sanctioned meaning that we all kind of accept these things. These can be positive or negative, but honestly, any stereotype is going to lead to negative impacts on that group. Thinking that, all fat people are happy and jolly, like Santa Claus, is very bad and wrong. Thinking that all Asians are bad drivers is very bad and wrong. Thinking that all Asians are good at math is going to lead you to some really risky and bad financial decisions. Thinking that every black person is out to get you. Look, I'm black and I'm literally trying to help you.
We are trying to help you. We're both black. We're here for you.
We're here for you.
We are here for you.
This is not a scam. There's no Nigerian prince here.
This is a free video on a free website.
Come on. So on and so forth. I'm sure you can think of many. Prejudice are favorable or unfavorable opinions or feelings about a person or a group that are usually formed without any knowledge, thought, or reason. Like just being like, yeah, I don't like black people. Why not? Because I don't. Why? Because no. And the issue is with that is your prejudice what's the word I'm looking to? Your prejudice make it easier for you to support laws and practices and customs that oppress a group for no real reason. Like, for example, a loitering law, which normally is mainly enforced on black people. And if you just don't like black people, you're more accepting of a loitering law because get those black people from out of my sight. You're racist. Now we're at the fun stuff. Forms of oppression. At this point in the video, we're going to go over different forms of oppression. We're going to give you a definition, and we're going to give you a covert and overt example of it. So, racism is a systematic oppression of a racial group to the social, economic, and political advantage of another. An overt example would be segregation. Go back to your country, blackie! Or a covert example would be dreadlocks are not a professional hairstyle. Shut the fuck up. Boom. Sexism is the prejudice or discrimination based on sex, which leads to misogyny, which is the hatred of or aversion to or prejudice against women. An overt example of this would be straight up paying women less. A covert example of this would be women and girls shouldn't have short hair. Grow the fuck up. Now we're at classism. Classism is the systematic oppression of lower class or middle class people to advantage the upper class. An example of this is, honestly, I only have one real example of this, but it's both overt and covert, so do with that what you will. When rich people use the stock market, it's seen as good, okay, for them to advance their wealth. But when the poor is gathered up together to buy all the stocks in GameStop to get just a little bit of money and support a company that they grew up with, politicians and stockbrokers ran to national television sites to cry and whine and call it a scam.
Literal cry. Literal tears.
Actual tears.
On CNN, crying.
On CNN.
Bawling like a child.
From grown people that we elected. Well, not me, but I vote, but I didn't elect any of those guys.
Y'all did.
Y'all did.
But you're here, so your verdict is okay. It's not okay.
It's not okay. But baby steps. Ableism. Ableism is a discrimination or social prejudice against people with disabilities and or people who are perceived to be disabled. An overt example of this would be no wheelchair access. And a covert example of this would be asking a deaf person if they can drive. Deaf people drive all the fucking time. Come on, let's grow up. It's blind people who can't drive. And if you have to ask why, you need to start watching and reading. You need to watch another video and you need to read more books. So next, we are at heterosexism, which you may know as homophobia. But, hey, we're using proper terms here. So,
yeah, it's just when you said, I'm like,
hey.
Just straight up heterosexuality. It's just oppression.
So it's Dan's straight, by the way, and Dan said that. So I don't want any of the comments to be like, ooh, you dyke bitch.
Yeah, if you guys want to bully anyone, you can bully me.
Dan said that one. Bully me for all the other stuff.
I'll bully you back. It's okay. We'll have fun with it.
Here at 3OD, we do bully back. So. Again,
it's weird. If companies don't bully back, it's just kind of weird. Like,
come on now.
Like, it's 2021. Stand up for yourself. Stop being a pussy.
Come on. The customer just isn't always right.
They just aren't.
So, with that, the discrimination or prejudice against non-heterosexual people based on the belief that heterosexuality is the only normal and natural expression of sexuality, which, no. So, I took the glasses off for that one. Look me in my eyes. No. Now we're at transphobia. So, transphobia is the fear, hatred, disbelief, or mistrust of people who are transgendered or thought to be transgendered, or whose gender expression does not conform to traditional gender roles. An overt example of this would be, God hates gays. And a covert example of this would be, I'm accepting of your lifestyle. Anyone in the LGBTQIA+ doesn't have a lifestyle, that is their life, that's who they are. Windsurfing, being a windsurfing enthusiast is a lifestyle.
Nobody needs your approval for anything.
No one needs your approval of anything. People are going to keep fucking, and people are going to keep surfing in the wind. So, do with that what you will. We're at xenophobia, which is the fear or hatred of people who are perceived to be foreign or strange. Overt example of this is, go back to your country, and you're like, hey, that sounds a lot like racism. Well, a lot of these interconnect, you'll see. So, a covert example of this would be, your English is so good, and you're like, hey, you used that example before. Because again, a lot of these intersect, my friend. Religious discrimination, which is treating a person or a group of differently because of their particular beliefs which are held about a religion. More specific examples of these in the West, as we are in the West, are anti-Semitism, which is a hostility towards or discrimination against Jews as a religious, ethnic, or racial group. So, either religiously or ethnically, because race isn't a thing. But we'll get into that later. And an example of that would be, the Jews hold all the money and control all the media. I told y'all, if this is not the video for you, just click off. It's fine. Now, this brings us to Islamophobia, which is the irrational fear or aversion to or a discrimination against Islam or people who practice Islam. An example of this would be radical Islamic terrorists. And you're like, hey, my senator says that all the time. Well, fat phobia, which is the irrational fear, aversion, or discrimination against obesity or people with obesity. An overt example of this would be, come here, fatty. And a covert example of this would be the entire fashion industry. Let's just be real about it. Come on. So, we're at ageism, which ageism is the prejudice or discrimination against a particular age group. Now, this really affects the elderly. An example of this would be when an older person forgets something for a moment and somebody who is younger than them calls it a senior moment. Watch your mouth, you whippersnapper. Now, this can go in the reverse too, as I'm sure we hear from plenty of politicians and people in power. Young people are all lazy and stupid. which is the example of ageism against young people. And they both suck and they're both wrong. Intersectionality. Intersectionality is very important because, as you've seen, most of these overlap in different areas, and people aren't just one thing. Black women will often have to face racism and sexism. Many young queer people are going to have to face classism and heterosexism. Many immigrants from the Middle East will face xenophobia or Islamic phobia when coming over here, maybe anti-Semitism, depending on what region they're from or their minority group. As newsflash, there are Jewish people still all over the world. And that's just kind of what it is. There's Islamic people all over the world. And that's just kind of what it is. So, the more intersections a person has, the more oppression that they will face. And it sucks. That's it. I'm Bravo. That's Dan.
I've been Dan.
Be a better person.